but she decided to go. She came back after 3 days and she had completely lost it. Semi money making scheme. I'm going to say something that is not going to be very popular.
Like a healer, which you are, you can uncover the dark areas of a soul. And I would use a word dangerous, which may be hidden or not unknowingly or knowingly by the other individual whom you are, healing. How do you protect yourself before you protect others? Because it can really disturb you, it can really harm you more than anything else. So how do you ensure that you are protected as part of that?
So when I started out, this is such an incredible, even to have this awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I applaud you. When I started out in my younger days, I was just enthusiastic to do, and I was clearing and I was doing, and I was a little bit clueless about what I was doing, and there was no protection.
Mm-hmm.
So every week I would work for 3 days and I would be sick for 3 days. And sick, violently sick. Like I would be in bed. I wouldn't be able to get out. I would be throwing up. I would have, emotional issues. I could get very angry. Firstly, being an empath, and you need to have an open soul to be able to do this work, to give and receive. So I was walking around all open in all ways and absorbing all of this. And it was very damaging. And then I actually met a healer from Israel.
Okay.
Who, couple of sentences that he said to me that really helped me get on this track of creating a more organized system for myself and to do the work. So we were talking, and I mentioned that I'm getting sick all the time and this is so hard to continue. And he goes, "Are you protecting yourself?" And I'm like, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "If you're not going to protect yourself, then of course you're going to be in trouble." So he was the first one to introduce me to a very basic way of protecting myself. And I started to do that. Since then I have created a pretty advanced version of that. And it is the first thing I do when I wake up.
Okay.
Before I step out of bed. And I teach this to all of my clients, because even as individuals, as we're walking about, we're picking up energies, and not only from each other, but this empty space is more than hydrogen and oxygen. There are a lot of energies and entities, and not ghosts alone, but many, many other types of energies that are there that impact us. So everybody needs protection and grounding. But this is something that I do. I do still, get derailed off and on, but now it is few and far between.
Interesting. Now, let's switch sides now. For a person who's getting healed, and as you tap into their soul, it may uncover things for them which can get them be dangerous, and I've shared this with others. I have had people who've been through the exercise, then they've never been suicidal, as an example. They suddenly become suicidal as part of this exercise, or they have self-doubt, which starts becoming a more prominent piece, and it's all part of the healing process. But that moment or that phase can be really dangerous for that individual. So how do you protect the other person now? A reverse question, because like you said, you have your own practices, and if you're open, you can share that. But for others who the clients are, it can get a little bad. And I have seen, in the healing process, it's called purging. You can purge in many ways as part of your healing process. And these purges can be depending upon how deep the trauma is, how deep that dark side is, your purging can be more aggravated. So how do you ensure that the other side is protected?
I'm going to say something that is not going to be very popular.
Okay.
The purging that you talk about, I don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now ayahuasca, different types of plant medicine, and a lot of practices that are out there that people get together for a weekend, they do whatever they do, they purge, and then they go back home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I am critically against this.
Oh,
and I'll tell you
okay.
why. This is semi-money making scheme.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, right? So I'm not saying you don't get a benefit from it, but the downside is way bigger, and I'll tell you why. So when you go back into the history of these things, when the shamans would do these ayahuasca ceremonies for people, you had the teacher, the shaman, with you before, and they came to the conclusion that this ceremony is going to help you. Then they were with you during, and then they supported you through, excuse my French, but the shit that came up.
Yeah.
The problem is not the purging. The problem is, how are you managing now the crap that has come to the surface? How are you making sense of it and continue? That purge lasts a long time, and that is your dangerous period.
Yeah.
Which in modern society and this modern healing, they do this thing for 3 days, 1 day, 2 days, and then they send you off, and now you're on your own, and you are now in touch with your shadow, obvious and not. And you don't have the tools to manage it, and you don't have anybody else who's holding your hand.
Yeah.
Who is that level of a spiritual healer who can do it? So I'll tell you, a client of mine who had been working with me for 1 year and doing brilliantly well,
Okay.
decided to go for one of these ceremonies because one of her friends was in being sort of certifying herself in plant medicine and kept telling her, you got to come, you got to come, you got to come. Now, this lady, as well as she was doing, she had some very dark places with me also she was unwilling to go to. So I was unraveling that one petal at a time. And she goes to California. She lives in the States, so she went to California for a weekend.
Okay.
And we had spoken about this, and I had, it's not my place to tell anybody what to do, but we had a great relationship. And so I did tell her honestly why I think she was not ready for it.
Okay.
But she decided to go. She came back after 3 days, and she had completely lost it. She picked up fights. She came back firstly with a bit of an attitude that I'm healed and I know, and what I have experienced is the be all and end all of it. And she picked a fight with me. She picked a fight with, so we had a group. She had brought a whole bunch of people to me, her friends, and even her mother who was suffering from cancer. She was such a big proponent of my work. So I knew what was happening with all of them and her, and she picked a fight with everybody, and she got really alienated, and it's because now all the things that were coming up, she did not know how to manage them. And if we do it the way it was intended to be done, see, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about in healing is ancient wisdom, Anis.
Yeah.
And it has been done for thousands and thousands of years back then in a certain way, in a very responsible way.
Yeah.
Today, we're taking components of it and running with them with very incomplete knowledge, information, and skills, if I may say so.
Yeah.
And so the receivers sometimes are more at a disadvantage than at an advantage. You know, even with courses, I'll tell you, if I may, when I started way back when, I decided to read some books, self-help books. You know, and there's a plethora of incredible knowledge there.
Yeah.
And I would read the testimonials, and people would say, my God, this changed my life, and this happened, that happened. I read 5 books. And at the end of each book, I was pretty well the same. So I started to feel maybe I was stupid. Maybe something was drastically wrong with me, because now I've read not 1, not 2, but 5 books, and I haven't had an iota of a difference in a change.
Yeah.
Right? Books appeal to a very different part of us.
Yeah.
And they train us from a very different part. You know, when you're looking for healing and all of these things, there are many, many other things we have to consider.
I hope you enjoyed this clip from my podcast series called Masters Decoded. The intention of bringing these clips to you is to allow you to understand some key moments of the conversations I've had with my guest. I would recommend and highly encourage you to listen to the entire podcast, which you can find the link to the podcast in the description below. I look forward to you subscribing to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you can be notified of all the future clips which we keep releasing every week on this channel.